morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. My name is Leslie Ann Johnson, of course, sitting in for the Prime Minister's press secretary, Ms. Philomena Robertson. We're happy to have each and every one of you here. And you can see the panel, so you know we're talking this morning once again about COVID-19. It's the topical issue right now. And of course, as the government seeks to ensure that everyone is on board and we all know what is expected of us and what can happen, how we can affect the economy, we want to ensure that everybody knows what is expected of them. So to my immediate left, the Honorable Nicholas Steele, Minister for Health. To his left, the COVID-19 Response Coordinator, Dr. George Mitchell, a former Chief Medical Officer. And we also have Ms. Misha Braffett from the School for the Deaf. So a number of important announcements were made by the Honorable Prime Minister last week, Friday. No visits to the homes for the elderly, social distancing, schools closed for 2 weeks, effective Monday. And just to let you know, colleagues, in terms of the social distancing, we're requesting that maybe some of you just, look at the postcard press briefing from in your respective workplaces. Of course, we need some of you here to ask questions, but as much as we can, let us seek to minimize the numbers that we have here just to ensure that we adhere to the social distancing policy. So now I turn over to the Honorable Nicholas Steele.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good morning to you all present, as well as all of our viewers and listeners out there. Just to give you an update of the current status, let me start by saying, as of 10 a.m. this morning, we have swabbed or tested a total of 18 persons. Of those 18 persons, we have received results for 10. All have been negative. 8 new tests went down last night. So we are expecting those results today. As you can tell from those numbers, the number of people that are being tested is increasing day by day. There is a new travel advisory, which I will now read to you, but as I'm speaking before the end of this press release, it will be released on social media, virtually by the ministry. Due to the widespread illness caused by coronavirus, COVID-19, reported in Iran, South Korea, China, and Europe, the government of Grenada is imposing the following travel restrictions, which will take effect Wednesday, March 18th at 23:59 p.m. You will be quarantined for a period of 14 days upon arrival into Grenada if you are a Grenadian national or resident. If you are not a Grenadian national or resident, and in the last 14 days you have been to Iran, South Korea, China, or anywhere in Europe, including the United Kingdom and Ireland, you will be refused entry into the country. Upon arrival from any other destination, you will be screened and asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. Please note, before disembarking, every passenger is required to complete a declaration form on your health status. You are also required to check in daily with the Ministry of Health, regardless of your point of origin. Additionally, additional methods of quarantine or isolation may become necessary if anyone becomes symptomatic. The Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation will be working out a schedule with the airlines for repatriation of visitors presently on island. Further to that, as of 12 a.m. this morning, all cruise ships, our ports are closed to all cruise ships. That official notice is also out on social media as we speak. I want to just touch on quarantine, but Dr. Mitchell will speak further to that. Just specifically to say, when we say quarantine, self-quarantine, yes, we do expect that the instances where you will go to your house where there are other family members living, you are to avoid all physical interaction and maintain social distancing. So that means for those of us who have loved ones who may have recently or will be returning, there is no hugging and kissing. We have to understand under these circumstances that either we may be importing that case, or we have to take the necessary precautions. So someone asked to self-quarantine. I do not expect, and we do not expect to see on social media a celebration or a party of friends coming over. Self-quarantine means to avoid any contact when necessary, any contact with anyone, including your family members, any physical contact. And that means in persons going to visit or persons interacting are increasing the risk. You have heard the release from the churches, and we thank them for their proactive approach. My heart goes out, and that of the government, to all of those who have lost loved ones recently and have to make these severe adjustments with respect to the final rites. Furthermore, restaurants and bars or refreshment house places. The government is requesting that all restaurants and refreshment houses refrain, as of today, from any in-house dining unless you can guarantee social distancing. We would prefer that you refrain from any in-house dining, but you can continue with takeout services. I want to particularly mention that today is St. Patrick's Day, and as far as I am concerned, St. Patrick will understand that there shouldn't be any celebrations on his behalf, which would put our citizens at risk. Spraying will continue in public spaces. In fact, you will see a gradual increase of that spraying and sanitizing of public spaces. And I want to clearly say, because there were some malicious rumors going around last week, the Prime Minister announced at midday that we would begin spraying and sanitizing public spaces. So you will see a continued increase. The malicious rumors of individuals fainting, and that's why the ministry ran to, it only serves to cause chaos. We do expect individuals will continue to have what we would now, fortunately or unfortunately, refer to as normal, regular medical emergencies. That does not mean that it is related to COVID-19, but that we are definitely saying that you will see an increase in the sanitizing of public spaces. To the private sector, we are asking that you think through your initiatives, and that wherever possible, because each company is unique, wherever possible, you put contingencies in place for working at home. It will be necessary in some instances for some employees to come to various offices in order to help coordinate activities as long as possible. We expect the private sector to take the initiative on this and to put plans in place for their own workers and their business. Banks, we are requesting and will be meeting with them later on in the week. Invitations will go out through the Ministry of Finance. But in the meantime, that banks and financial institutions take into consideration the other measures that have become necessary in other countries that go on what is referred to now as complete lockdown, similar to the measures that would or may have been implemented after the passing of Ivan. I want to speak to the second case that was identified in Trinidad, and to let the public know that yes, that individual was in Grenada on the 28th of February. However, we must use science. The person, we have the information and confirmed. The person came to Grenada for the 28th, one night, and left. That is 18 days ago. And our communication with all the individuals that person interacted show that no one has shown symptoms as yet. So they would be counted as being safe now. The case from St. Lucia that also involved the individual being in Grenada previously is part of the increase that you are seeing in the test swabs that have been sent to CARFA. The contact tracing continues, and we are monitoring all individuals that have been in contact. I want to take this opportunity to also thank the management of the Radisson, who have been totally transparent and cooperative with us, as they understand the seriousness of the matter, just like we do. We also have a Cuban medical team that is scheduled to arrive here on Saturday to help assist. These will include doctors and nurses specifically trained in accident and emergency intensive care, as well as infectious diseases. And we continue to request more. The Cuban pharmaceutical product known as interferon that you have heard discussions on social media about, we have discussed and reached out with the government of Cuba through their embassy here, and are in the process of ensuring that that medication is on island shortly. I want to be specific and say that it is a new drug, but we have decided to make sure that we have all tools possible that we can use once our challenges become greater. We have also received from the government and people of the People's Republic of China assistance which is on its way, which includes for our medical personnel team protective face masks for medical use, medical disposable protective clothing, infrared thermometers, medical protective goggles, disposal sterilized rubber surgical gloves, and medical isolation shoe covers, all at minimum 500 pieces each of those items. So I want to take this opportunity as well to include the government of the People's Republic of China for the assistance that they are now able to offer us. And again, to thank them for the very severe measures they took very early that has bought us the time to date. And we need to recognize their efforts. Based on the information we have, in the last 24 hours, China had 21 new cases of the virus. And interestingly enough, from what we are told, 16 of those cases were imported into China. I want to truly commend publicly and thank the efforts of the team of health workers who have stepped up. In the last week, we have seen a tremendous flow of individuals stepping forward and doing what is necessary and required. So I want to recognize them and thank them. I do recognize, or I am aware, that there are one or two individuals that continue to spread a negative attitude or environment on social media in particular. My comment to them and to you, the public of Grenada, is that the rest of dedicated healthcare workers are completely occupied with preparing and readying themselves for what we believe to be the inevitable. I leave it to you, the community members and the neighbors of these individuals, to speak to them for us and ask them to also to step up and do what is required as healthcare workers. But I also, in that same breath, want you to make sure that you take the time to thank and recognize and support any and all of our healthcare workers that are all making the necessary sacrifices to prepare. At the General Hospital, we do have one isolation facility that can take between 2 and 4, and that facility is completely ready, in my opinion. There are, or maybe, minor tweaking going on, housekeeping issues or so, but it is ready should we need to isolate the first identified patient that needs medical attention. We are also in the process of preparing a second site at the General Hospital, the site that would formerly have been known as CID headquarters. That will be the second isolation site, and contractors are working feverishly to get that site ready, hopefully by the end of the week. We need to consistently now practice social distancing. But we also need to make sure that everyone is on board. And as such, the Prime Minister has asked me to use this forum and this opportunity to say that he is requesting that all stakeholders join him in forming a social compact. That would include opposition, labor, private sector, NGOs, and religious entities. We need to all be on the same page, placing Grenada first, and making sure that we do not use the challenges that we have right now to score political points or to try to damage any of the individuals who have to take on the role of leadership right now. History will remember those who have stepped forward at this time to assist their country, and will also remember those who still continue at this time to try to tear their country down. This is not a Grenadian challenge. This is a global challenge. You are now seeing that first world nations that we acknowledge, all acknowledge, that have ideal healthcare systems are unable to cope. We are not going to be any different, which is why we all need to stand together, and which is why we are looking forward to all the stakeholders to step forward and join us in a social compact. In closing, in my opinion, based on the demands, requests, and expectations that I've heard from numerous quarters and public statements, my one response in all to everybody who is making requests and demands are what I think right now are the most appropriate and fitting words that were uttered by John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I plead with those out there who are making demands of the ministry, minister, and government. Before they make those demands public again, repeat those words and see if they fit. So having said that, I think I will ask Dr. Mitchell to speak a little bit more about quarantine and the testing process right now, because I know many people have been concerned about it or asking about it. In other words, what actually is involved in testing? How do we test someone for COVID-19, so you are aware of it, and anything else he chooses to speak on before we open up for questions and comments.
Thank you, Minister, and let me take this opportunity as well to say hi and good morning to the listenership wherever you are, and just to reiterate that our strategic objectives are being pursued as we speak, and one of the key issues that we are going to deliberate on and ensure that happens is that we fine-tune our efforts to ensure that we do not have transmission in country. And as such, Minister spoke to the issue of contact tracing. We are aware that many persons are concerned about the Radisson case that came from St. Lucia, and our team has been on the ground pursuing, with the involvement of SGU, as I said yesterday, the most scientific way to ensure that those persons are followed up and that we are not having local transmission. So those tests were done and they are in Trinidad to ensure. In the interim, we are asking those persons to definitely self-quarantine themselves so that we don't get a situation of local transmission. The other emphasis that we are stepping up on is the question of those who are coming back to Grenada. We are aware that we have Grenadians out there that we would never say don't come home. It is your sweet home. But we are saying that once you come home, then you definitely need to self-quarantine. And we are providing you with information. We will ask you to definitely check in so that we avoid as much as we can. And we will be putting systems in place to ensure that those persons don't spread the disease. We believe that if we take those measures seriously, if we step up on those measures, we can minimize or curtail transmission, and that would be the best case scenario. That is why I think the importance of the travel advisory now that has been announced by the minister is important, because in that way we are ensuring that the possibility of importing more cases is down to a minimum. So those are going to be measures that we're taking to safeguard the population. And I think those are extremely important as we go forward and face the challenge of controlling these diseases. I must say that the team has been doing a fantastic job. Dr. Martin, Dr. Sean, all the frontline workers have been doing a fantastic job. Immigration, customs, all of those persons on the front line have been stepping up their game and making sure that they take the necessary precautions so that they can minimize if and when, and hopefully not, that we have to deal with that situation, that they are preparing themselves to do so. And I really want to thank everybody who has stepped forward. So this is our renewed emphasis on trying to ensure that we don't have transmission. We believe that if other countries in the region do that, and they have been doing that, they have been following our steps, and I am proud to say that. Last night, yesterday evening, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad mentioned or implemented similar measures that we took since Friday, and we are proud of that. In other words, we have been proactive, we have been out there to safeguard the population, and we will continue to do so. In relation to the actual testing process, we are going to continue, as Minister said, to test persons, those who we think are or have been most exposed or potentially exposed. We are going to continue to pursue them and test them. And the process is as such that we find them, we swab them. That is, the samples are taken to the lab where they are packaged. Oh, Minister wants me to actually explain how do we swab. Of course, a swab, it comes in a little tube. I am sorry that I didn't bring the tube today, but it comes in a little tube. You have to take it out from the tube, and you actually use the end of that little swab. It looks like sort of like a airbud, yeah. And you actually swab the person in the nose or in their mouth and push it back in the tube, seal it. It has to be sent to the lab and packaged in a certain way by our persons in the lab. And we want to thank them as well. The girls are working hard to ensure, because those are what we call biological samples. They have to be done in a particular way, and those are transmitted then to to the airport in a particular way, as I said, and send by quick pack to Trinidad. Once it's in Trinidad, we have collaborated with CARFA so that they can pick it up and take it to the lab where the actual testing would take place. So that's the actual process. And before I close the mic, I want to thank all of the persons who've been expressing their support for the ministry's effort out there. I walked through St. George's yesterday, and folks are, thanking the ministry and their team for the efforts. We want to thank you. We want to ask you to join the effort as well, and to ensure that the country remains safe. That is, for me, of paramount importance. That the country, nobody else, the country, really, all of us, that this is what that means: remain as safe and as healthy as possible. I want to stop here, and we will open for questioning.
Thank you, gentlemen. So, colleagues, the floor is now open. Please identify yourselves and your media house and proceed to ask your questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Nisha Paul, the New Today newspaper. Just for clarity, the persons, the confirmed cases, the one in Trinidad and the one in St. Lucia that would have passed, you mentioned that the persons who they would have come into immediate contact with are safe. Can you just provide some clarity? Have these persons been contacted, and what precautionary measure has been taken? Have they been tested to ensure that they have not contracted the virus at all?
I will give the brief answer, and if anything, Dr. Mitchell will give more details. But the St. Lucia case, we are focusing more attention on, and that worries me more, because the person was symptomatic here. Made a conscious decision not to inform any medical personnel, but the person did exhibit symptoms while they were here, not upon entering, but while they were here. In the Trinidad case, the person had no symptoms when they were here. We're only here for 1 day, and that is 18 days ago. So the response is slightly different on both. I would say that some of the individuals from the St. Lucia case are exhibiting symptoms of a sort. That's why we have to test them to make sure. As you know, this is flu season as well. We have to test. They are in quarantine. We have to test to make sure that it is COVID-19 or something else. So the response and effort is a lot more concentrated on the Radisson case there.
Just to reiterate, yes, that as I said earlier on, the issue of scientific methodology of ensuring that the most sort of like exposed persons are being followed is being pursued. And the tests that we spoke about that was sent down are mainly from these individuals. And we have asked them to self-quarantine in the interim. So we are just awaiting the results of those tests to confirm or to not to confirm that they are indeed, in having that condition. In the interim, though, what is most important, I think, is the issue of the quarantine, because if they are indeed positive, then it means that we have sort of like encapsulated the spread by asking them to stay home. So those are measures that are in place as we speak to avoid outward spread. That is extremely, extremely important as we speak.
Let me just say something that would help with maybe some of the questions, follow-up, or others. In my opinion, and I want to be very specific with this, Dr. Mitchell and myself always have to consider the worst-case downside. That's why we're here, to consider the worst-case downside. And in our opinion, while all of our tests to date have been negative, we have to consider or believe that it is here and we just haven't found it as yet, and act as such. So I want you to be sure that you put that in the proper context. It is in our best interest as a nation to assume that it is here, not a failure of the system, but to assume that it's here. No healthcare system has been perfect with this anywhere in the world, and we have to assume that we're no different here. We can't be that lucky. While we have been proactive, we have to assume the worst case. So yes, we are taking the various measures, etc. Yes, we are waiting on the test results. But no, I am not going to pretend that I think we've done an amazing job and we've been different from anywhere else in the world. So that is why you will hear us keep speaking about the social distancing and the various protocols to follow, which are the ones that if you follow them, you stand a very good chance of not getting the COVID-19. Probably you will not get, we could say, if you follow all the protocols.
Okay, we have used up now 18 out of the 25 tests. Or what are the plans to acquire more?
The numbers, you should get it right. All right. We have more than 25. We said that we got 25 from Paho in recent times, but we had some on island. So it's upward of 35 kits that we have. Yes, we have utilized 18, and so we have the remainder. You do the math. And as we speak, we are making strenuous efforts, if you ask me, to acquire more of these test kits, and maybe Minister could speak to some of the entities and countries that we have been soliciting more test kits from and more testing material.
Just before the start of this, I'm able to confirm that we've ordered an additional 600. Which is separate from those that were already in transit or are already in transit. We've ordered an additional 600 test kits. Apart from that, yes, because as many of you have seen, WHO has announced recently that they would like countries to test as much as possible, where before the previous protocol was to test until you were aware of community transmission and then stop. They have changed and asked us to continue to test as much as possible. So we have ordered what, in our opinion, should be the right amount to carry us all the way through to when we have our own machine, which you've seen with the U.S. as well. The president of the U.S. In the last 24 hours announced that they don't have enough. And while all I can say is that we have been quietly and diligently making sure that the equipment, bits of equipment that we have ordered gets out of the U.S. as quickly as possible, or the UK, or whatever sources they're coming from. I don't want to be too specific. Before those very countries say, we want to keep everything that we have. That is also one of the reasons why, in our opinion, having thought this through, the more practical approach is to try and make sure that those airlines run for as long as possible. Because they're not just going to be bringing people, and I know that's what many of you would be concerned about, that the airlines are bringing people. Why don't we close our borders? They're bringing assistance as well. And if we act too harshly, we would also be cutting off the vital bits of assistance. We have, for instance, I know that we have Grenadian medical students who were doing their residency program in the United Kingdom, who are now looking to come home, and because they would be healthcare professionals, have something to offer.
the closure of the port to the cruise ships, how long would that last? I'm not sure if I missed it when you spoke about it the first time.
All of the measures with respect to restrictions are until further notice. Now, like, for instance, you've heard the Prime Minister announce that the schools are closed for 2 weeks in the first instance. With respect to travel, we have said basically until further notice. So I'm including cruise in travel until further notice.
Good morning, Rachel Bain, MTV. Has government been in talks with utility companies, especially NOASA, and what measures are being put in place?
What I can say is that there are two teams. Right? There's a health team, of which I head, and there's a financial team, and everything else that our dear Prime Minister is steering and leading. This, as we approach that, if you want to refer to it as 0 hour, is, well, new, not very different to an impending hurricane, imminent hurricane or so, that shut down and hunker down. And therefore, the essential services do have contingency plans, but I have spoken to some of them, not all, because, like I said, there's another team. I've spoken to some of them, and we've had discussions with respect to what they're doing and just confirming. To be specific, I've spoken to Mr. Christopher Husbands. Why him and not the others? Because Mr. Christopher Husbands is also the chair of the NIS, which falls under my purvey. So we've had reason to interact from a health standpoint and a ministry standpoint. And in our conversations, or at the end of our conversations, I would ask him about his contingency plans, and he would be telling me, and we would comment or discuss it or so. So that's why I know that each one of the utilities and so are putting their various contingency plans in place. And that's why I also requested that the private sector start stepping up and doing their part. We can give them guidance or guidelines, and those that guidance or guidelines are maintain a social distancing, and wherever possible, maintain work at home ability.
Considering that you had a conversation with Mr. Husbands, who is also the chair of the NIS, is NIS prepared for large payouts should the virus reach our shores?
We are contemplating, and we are looking at all of the scenarios, and in particular the worst case scenario. Like I said, that is a different team that is looking at the financial impact of this, and our Prime Minister has announced that there were meetings with, and continue to be meetings with, World Bank, IMF, and other entities who are themselves dealing with what are the financial implications of this, the complete and total financial implications of this. The variable is, in my opinion, how other first world nations deal with this and what the impact to them is. We can do whatever we have as the best that we can do, but it depends on how long everybody else gets out of this. If it takes longer for the U.S. than us to get to zero, then it has a different sort of financial impact. I think this would be the opportunity to say, like, specifically for China. China was the first to experience this. China's gone through and come out at great cost. But then China is now able to ramp up its economic activity, which it will use to assist the world, and possibly which means that China begins their economic recovery faster, or first, than the rest of us. And how that happens dictates how we all, as a global village, get out of this. But yes, to answer your question specifically, the discussions and contingencies are being had and putting in place. the commitments and the monies are being allocated. I think what we need to recognize is that Grenada is in a very good position financially. While we don't have the billions of dollars that some of the first world nations have that are experiencing challenges themselves, we are not entering this difficult period debt-ridden. We are entering this difficult period in one of our best financial positions. So that doesn't mean that it's not going to affect us significantly as a people and as a nation financially, but that does mean that we're in the same way I would say that try and be as healthy as possible and take your vitamins, etc. And so as an economy, we are healthy as possible and have taken our vitamins and so on now. Ready as best as possible for the storm, which we don't know how bad it will be.
The world in itself is on a economic standstill, and there's a saying, when these big worlds sneeze, Grenada catches the cold. So will we see the retrenchment of workers if this virus reaches Grenada?
That is what the other team is looking at and trying to prevent or trying to mitigate and so and right now I think what we need to concentrate on is to stay as healthy as possible. There is going to be an economic impact because we've already seen first world nations that we rely on for tourism and trade are being significantly impacted. So we need to concentrate on health and minimizing the effects of this virus, the health effects of this virus. And if we can do that, then the unknowns for now about the economic impact of this virus can be mitigated as best as possible.
Is government prepared to subsidize small businesses?
There is, again, I will say, a different team that is working on that and looking at all of the various scenarios. So I can ask that question, but I'm sure that the answer is, look, all scenarios are being contemplated. What we need to recognize is that, yes, as a government, we want to make sure that our economy is not, well, minimize the damage, and that we are able to reignite or stimulate the economy as quickly as possible at the end. So that is most definitely a discussion that has to be had, but at the same time, that question from the small businesses also needs to have, like I said earlier, the words of John F. Kennedy. We're all in this together, and there is no sector that's not going to pay a price. But as a government, we got to make sure that we support those sectors as much as possible within our capabilities to minimize, wherever possible, whatever the effects are. But everybody has to take a piece of this.
Okay. Rena Pierre, GBN. Now, understanding that the COVID-19 threat is not just a health issue, but has national disastrous consequences, how is NATMA involved? And the mere fact that we treated it as a disaster, it means that, we have to follow the instructions. So is there involved, and, why are we not hearing from them? I'm giving you all my questions one go. Plans and procedures in place for regional collaboration, health and disaster management. Is there any information platform established in that regard? And is there a national and regional task force? And who are they? We need to know who are they. I'm asking. Also, you spoke about cruise ship closure. Does that include yachts?
With respect to NADMA, this storm is a health storm. NADMA most definitely has been, we've been in discussions and coordinating and so. But like with a rail hurricane, the information and flow of information comes primarily from Met Office. In this instance, the information and flow of information comes primarily from the Ministry of Health. NADMA's mechanisms with respect to dissemination of information, and more importantly in this instance, the flow back of information from the various communities, if and when we were to be closed off from a community or so, is part of why from very early we have been discussing and speaking, etc. This is a new type of storm, and you will see with most other countries, while all have been put their national emergency agencies also on alert and at a level of readiness, and have them participating in this process. It has been led from the health standpoint. The issue of cruise and yachts, what we have done is closed for entry or clearance all of our yachting ports except Port Louis. The majority of those ports, that is where, Port Louis has the majority of yacht visitors. There is a screening being done there, and the rules and regulations with respect to where the travel history of individuals apply there as well. In other words, an individual on a yacht who has a travel history would not be allowed entry into Grenada unless they are a Grenadian citizen, and they will be asked to quarantine. So the same policy exists. That has been a difficult challenge, as the Petit Martinique case has shown, because we have such a wide borders or marine borders. That has been a challenge. As recently as yesterday, I've been having discussions or coordination with the Chief of Police on that as to additional methods or reactions to certain things or perceived threats or threats that we see. But it's our decision to close certain aspects with respect to travel is a combination of, one, the threat, and two, our ability to put resources on it. So because from Friday, in my opinion, based on the announcements that we got out of St. Lucia, while we were looking internally as well, we now have to consider what we saw in the 24 hours, Thursday and Friday of last week, where our neighboring countries were declaring first cases from the UK and the US, caught all of us off guard. It meant that the UK and the US were not totally transparent to the rest of us as to the number of cases. So it causes us to have to be proactive or recognize, reactive in this instance, of looking internally and elsewhere. So it keeps progressing day by day. If at any point, that minute that we think the resources that we have to allocate towards maintaining yachts coming in are being stretched, or that they're too fluid in terms of unable to capture, then we would make that appropriate announcement. I think what we would most definitely, or what I want to, the one takeout for that with respect to yachting or any traveler, is that the world is asking, including Grenada, no more non-essential travel. So I cannot fathom, and you're putting additional challenges on us, if anybody is thinking of taking a vacation at this time. I forgot to mention, but I can mention here now too, Cabinet made a decision on Monday, at the sitting of Cabinet, that all government travel, whether approved previously by Cabinet or not, has been cancelled, unless it's deemed as an emergency travel or specific to the COVID-19 response. All government travel, whether approved previously or not, has been cancelled.
Minister, understanding that this is a health issue, I just want to ensure that I get this. Is the Ministry of Health working along with NADMA as it relates to COVID-19? And is there any regional collaboration with health and disaster management?
You did ask that about the regional collaboration. The regional collaboration exists with respect to CDIMA and CARFA. Again, CARFA to CDIMA because this is a medical. The ministers of health are in constant communication with each other, and we try as best as possible to update each other as quickly as possible. But because of the age we live in with respect to social media, things happen real time. So by the time, sometimes in some instances, by the time a minister in one island is calling to notify of a related issue, it's already out or possibly already out on social media in some form or fashion. But also, on the other side, it is for us as ministers to be able to verify or confirm or debunk some of the false things that are coming out of some of our various islands, which is why I'm sure if you've looked at any and all of the public addresses or press briefs and so from any and all of the health ministers throughout the region, there has been a request to cease and desist with the disinformation and the misinformation and the misdirection of our population. The pen is mightier than the sword. And the members of the media need to know the power of the pen they have and to use that power positively. It serves no purpose at this point in time to use the power of the pen to cause self-doubt in the community.
Minister, so with that being said, did a regional task force or a national one, both, was it established between the governments and ministers and stuff?
The regional task force exists with SEDIMA and CARFA with respect to in the same way you see the Ministry of Health taking the lead in Grenada and coordinating with NADMA here. Regionally, SEDIMA coordinates with CARFA on this, yes.
My final question, what is, let me just find it, what is a consequence for someone who withhold their travel history or lie?
According to the Public Health Act, the establishment, that is why I established a sanitary board. The sanitary board does have the power of forceful quarantine, forceful isolation at a facility, appropriate facility or so. And there are others with respect to national security, etc., endangering, purposefully endangering. There are existing laws with respect to false declarations on any of the forms entering the country, customs or immigration, that existed before this. Individuals sign that the information is truthful. It is not a coincidence that our immigration officers are police officers as well. So there are certain laws already with respect to false declarations. And also, as we see in this instance, with respect to non-compliance. We are in the situation that we're in with respect to Radisson. From what I would say, we can't blame that individual solely and wholly. What we got to recognize is that where we have been educating our population to let them know of the signs and the protocols to follow for weeks, certain first world nations have not. And some of their citizens in traveling, because they haven't been sensitized, have not taken this as seriously as they should. So this is why first and foremost, it is education and sensitizing.
Minister.
Minister, I wanted to add that there are financial implications and consequences according to the Act. I reviewed it as soon as the sanitary authority was reestablished. In my opinion, quite frankly, they need to be updated in terms of the quantum, and we look forward. But at the same time, I want to say that, we really looking for persons not to disobey, not to do anything that would endanger themselves or their families, and as such, those fines and measures would not have to be implemented. So the clarion call is going out there. Before I hush up on this on this point, I noticed that when you said that the pen was mightier than the sword, that the members of the media smiled, and I think they in real time, Minister understands their responsibility, and so the call is really out there, and I said it in the first press conference here that we really want to see a shift and an informative shift in that direction, and a responsibility that the media has to really ensure that our population is informed and take the right measures, and the sensationalization is actually downplayed as much as you possibly can. Thank you.
I have a few more questions. So, there are systems in place of Are there systems in place of discussions that is to take place as it relates to the financial implications and the ability to probably pay salaries? Or is it one of the areas of discussions with the bank as it relates to waiving loans of businesses?
I think the best, I touched on that with respect to when I said earlier in my opening remarks that we're asking the private sector and the bank, financial sector, etc., to think this through as well. So when they meet with the other team, all efforts are being made. While we have to lead this charge, all stakeholders have to also do as much as they can. So in the meeting of that team, that is the objective. But it depends on how well the team gels, and it also depends. It's not just a Grenadian thing. It's the same question being asked in all of our Caribbean islands, and the same question being asked in every country in the world right now. So as each and every country finds answers, one thing we are sure of is for each and every country, the answer is quite likely going to be unique to that country.
There is a number of social distancing measures. How is the police involved in ensuring that these measures are adhered to by the public?
Well, I do hope that we don't have to get to that point. That through peer pressure and community observation, that we become self-enforcing. It truly would be unfair of us all as a people to say that our police have to take the full responsibility for that, which would be people hugging us or shaking our hands or so. No, it is for us to recognize the time for that, for the time being, has passed. And that we, in most cases, we know these individuals, or in cases I have seen where I mention, not because I'm the Minister of Health, because some of these people don't know or didn't recognize me. Some of them were foreigners as well, so they definitely wouldn't have recognized me. Being informative to somebody about the realities of the mistakes that you see them making, I think in most cases, as I have seen where I have done it, has had one of two results, if not both. It has had them recognizing their folly and also draws support from anybody else around that they will join you in the comments to the individual or individuals to say, this is unacceptable. Haven't you been paying attention?
Travel advisory for the USA, is it under consideration?
Travel advisory on the whole, constantly being evaluated, constantly being evaluated. As I said earlier, it is to keep those lines of logistical lines as open as long as possible. We also have to recognize that the decision in certain instances may not be ours to make. I'll give you a scenario. For instance, as the UK steps up further and further its efforts to control the outbreak there, what if the UK, like other countries, shut down public transportation? Then it would be assumed that airline workers and airport workers, etc., and so are going to have challenges, difficulties getting to work, and therefore the airlines themselves, before we say, will have no choice. And as you saw with when it was China alone, some of the airlines made unilateral decisions to stop or discontinue or cut down flights to China because of passenger loads. So you need to be very much aware that as we put travel restrictions to UK, Europe, that means the passenger loads coming from UK, Europe will significantly decrease. In the short term, the airlines hopefully will maintain their obligation to the passengers that they brought, who are foreign, that they come to get them, to take them back to their homes. But that's also dependent on UK government, airline owner, management, shareholder, etc., individual decisions.
So I have a question from Siobhan Benjamin via WhatsApp, so I'm going to play it for you.
Let me say something here. For the individual in particular, I know that individual. We have interacted, and up until recently, I've had a lot of respect for that individual. But we must all choose, especially you, who we are and what role we will play in this. You as media workers need to decide whether you are media workers, social commentators, or activists. And I believe that individual is on record as being a provocative activist with insulting remarks to me. And therefore, I will not give that individual the privilege of being able to proffer a question here, because I would be encouraging such actions by others if I did that.
Okay, I have a question as it relates to sanitization. With the increasing need for every one of us to, practice sanitary measures in terms of, obtaining the disinfectant sprays and so on and so forth, has any consideration been given to maybe exempting tax off of these items, and in particular for the companies who bring them in, maybe tax exemptions at the port or so?
Most definitely. But the challenge right now worldwide is supply. But most definitely, such considerations are being given by the financial team on that appropriately. I know for sure, because I got confirmation when I asked specifically, there are certain private sector entities and organizations that have various bits and pieces of assistance on the way or looking to send. and have asked if I send extra thermometers or if I send extra masks, gloves, etc. and so to you to help, will there be, or to my organization to help, will there be exempt? And in those instances, most definitely with one caveat. We are all in this together as long as the private sector entities, when we give them that break, that they also take a break and don't use it for price gouging or profiting.
And also, the medication that we're getting from Cuba. Can you just provide a bit of information about the medication, and as well how accessible would it be for us?
Okay, so this medication is interferon. It is a medication that helps boost your immune system, and as such, the fact is that we don't know for sure that medication kills the virus, but what it does do is to boost your immune system. And if we are saying that the primary reason why people are going to demise is because their immune system is low, then we believe sincerely, and based on reports coming out of other countries, China, for example, that medication was invaluable in saving some lives. We believe that we're going to be able to use that medication in those instances where people have reached that type of medical situation where they would require it. That is to boost the immune system and to give the system an opportunity to recover. So that is where the medication would come in. We want to reiterate that the medication is not directly a vaccine, or it does not kill the virus per se, but it helps with your overall ability to fight the virus. In terms of how it is, I don't know if you want me to go that granular, how it is dispensed and all of that. We will have to, when it comes and the dosage and all of that, our medical experts would take charge of that.
So I guess we would know how affordable it would be, that we would know the costing when it arrives as well, or do you have that?
No, we don't have the costing as yet.
Okay, Minister, just one follow-up question on the exemption of tax on the medical supplies. And so if, for example, I decide to bring in my own supplies, like I order maybe my sanitizers and these sort of things, and I bring it in, is that, is tax exemption also being considered for that aspect?
There would be that contemplation by the financial committee. We need to look at it. It would depend, or they would need to look at it. It would depend on the quantities. I mean, if you're bringing in for personal consumption, it should meet the requirements already for exemption. If you're bringing in for trade, it has to be treated differently. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be some sort of consideration. But that is a question for the Ministry of Finance and that team to respond to. And I would let them deal with that from that standpoint. What I would say on that issue is that we really need to have people stop hoarding. I've had discussions with some of the private sector importers and distributors and supermarkets about that and measures that would be put in place. We need to find that balanced response to this and recognize that we're all in this together. If some of us hoard all the sanitizers and then the rest of us don't have, those same individuals are going to suffer longer as well. So we need to be conscious of that.
Minister,
Okay, just one follow-up. Go ahead. Okay, just one follow-up question. Is this something that the ministry is considering, like bringing in these supplies and so, the sanitizers and the sanitizing sprays and so on? and other medical supplies to combat the virus?
The ministry is looking at all possible avenues. But as you have seen, the mighty United States announced yesterday that they are going to be lacking as well. So what we need to recognize as a people is that each and every one of us, including the ministry, has to do their utmost. But that we are going to be foolhardy if we expect one particular entity, whether it is the ministry, the government, the private sector, labor, healthcare workers, any churches, to be the only one to resolve our issues. We all have to do certain things or as best as possible.
Okay. Minister, a follow-up question as it relates to the 18 persons that were tested for COVID. The 18 persons that was tested for COVID, were they all workers of the hotel or were they other people? Also, as it relates something that I've experienced, as it relates to the shortage of hand sanitizers, there are some stores that are exploiting the price. And this is just my personal experience. 3 of these little bottles for $20. And I think I would like a comment on that. And as it relates to quarantine, I know that just as you were asking some of the students, if they want to leave, there are some of Grenadian students out there in Trinidad and other countries who are asked to come back home. What is the measures that's going to be used as it relates to them? Are we going to quarantine them? Are we going to ask them to self-isolate as it relates to that? I have a comment, but...
On the issue of price gouging, you need to focus some efforts on that as well, and make the public aware of, and put the necessary pressure as responsible. That's the scandal you should be chasing. That's the issue that you need to be making sure is in the national interest to expose. And as you have seen in other countries, based on the laws or so, and public pressure, individuals are forced to self-correct. Those private sector entities or whoever they may be, whether it is somebody hoarding or whether it is somebody price gouging. Expose them, assist us, do your part in that. Your other question with respect to students or so, it matters not what somebody was doing outside as a Grenadian citizen. I think I'm clear. Any Grenadian citizen returning from anywhere will be asked to quarantine. More focus, attention, and screening will be aimed at those who are returning from the countries that we have listed here. But that doesn't mean that similar, if not equal, focus and screening will be used on others. So I hope that addresses also the question.
Just one more thing.
There's one question that was not answered, the one related to screening. If 18 of those persons were in direct contact or relation to the St. Lucia case, no. We continue to screen persons who exhibit symptoms, who may have come forward. We have cases of persons who have come forward and say, hey, look, I had a travel history and I don't feel comfortable. I am having a little cold. We have tested them. In other words, we have not left stones unturned. Persons concerned, we have actually addressed it and we continue to do so. And persons have come forward and we have reached out to them, and there are a couple samples that have been sent from the hospital as well. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Could you give me
Just for clarity, all of the 18 were not related to, but some of the 18 are. Yes. You got to be careful with respect to individuals' privacy, health-wise. Yes.
Minister.
Well, it's almost 11:30 here, so we would need to wrap up at some point. I'm sure they have other places to be. So let's make it quick.
When can we expect the preliminary report from your external team? Can I give you all my questions one time? Nah.
Preliminary report from our external team. Or the financial team. That would be up to them. I think they will. They have been giving updates, the Prime Minister or so, and it is various opportunities. But I would expect that they would have something to say very soon on it.
Agriculture will be greatly impacted. What is government's contingency plan?
We are all in this together. Every sector will be greatly impacted. Depending on how long this lasts, yes, agriculture will be impacted from the point of view of some of the fertilizers, etc. Imported agriculture will be impacted because some of us will be sick. Agriculture will be impacted because some of our imports won't come, and we will have to rely on, as a promotion to agriculture, some of the very products that we have scorned may now be the only products that we can get in soon or so. So it's all aspects of this.
Okay, my final question, isn't it kind of risky asking people to self-quarantine instead of government or the health officials quarantining them?
Two things on that. One, we believe with the education that we have given and public service announcements, etc., that we have given to members of the public at large, those of us who have been here through this, that we are going to monitor and we are going to be our neighbor's keeper. And we have had instances or calls about individuals intending to or trying to, that were stopped by the community at large. If we go the other route of saying that anyone who comes in, the government will place you in a facility for quarantine, at the beginning of this we would have run out of that space and would have had to contemplate closing borders completely, even to our Grenadians, which is not a practical or even contemplated or allowed based on our constitution effort that we want to consider. So there has to be a give and take. And if you look at even the same first world nations, they are all saying self-quarantine, and in certain extreme instances, which is what I have said or implied in the address today, I've said that we have the option or may change the form of quarantine or turn quarantine into isolation.
Finally, I just want to find out, is Tyrrell Bay a part of accepting yachties, or I just wanted you to mention that just to let Carriacou know what's happening?
Yes, so there's Port Louis, and I'm sorry, and to our brothers and sisters in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, my apologies. Tyrrell Bay and Port Louis. Okay. On the island of Grenada, Port Louis, and our islands, large islands of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, who have, again, I want to take every opportunity to congratulate the people of Petit Martinique in the way they responded. But Tyrrell Bay is the port of entry.
All right, so it's almost 11:30, but Minister, I just need to get in one or two quick questions. There's a town hall meeting on Thursday.
We are going to have a virtual town hall meeting on Thursday, which is open to the nation, that will allow individuals virtually in the various forms that we can do virtually, to ask questions and for it to be an informative session, that hopefully at the end of that we will all be, us included, because we are always interested in some of the questions, and so that helps us know where holes that we need to plug or information that we need to reiterate or change the way that we produce it or so. So yes, you will see on social media the ramping up of the advertising of that session on Thursday, and also to use this opportunity as well to congratulate and offer our continued support medically to our transportation sector, our bus owners and so who have stepped up and were able to respond as soon as we issued the protocols with respect to them. We're able to respond thus far. They are going to experience more challenges, and I continue to thank them for doing their part. As I keep saying, and I can't say enough, we're all in this together, and everybody has to do their part. We're now at the point where we need to, as a community as a whole, tolerate only what can I do for my country and not what my country can do for me, and see how we can get through this as best as possible. So we would like to continue that communication with the bus and taxi owners associations, continue that dialogue with hotel owners, restaurant owners, financial institutions, private sector as a whole. Some of that dialogue is going to be from the financial team, and some of that dialogue will be from the medical team. Right now, what you got to recognize is the team that has been in the war room, so to speak. You got to expect the inevitability, where the actual doctors who have been performing the roles of advisors and coordinators are going to need to go out there and be doctors.
Okay, Minister, I know there's the social distancing and all that in place, but do you think there could be a situation where health workers might become so scared if, God forbid, we start having cases? What would happen? Because these people for themselves would be afraid to contract this virus. What would happen in a situation like that? And then again, if God forbids, that the situation becomes a bit overwhelming for our health system.
The Ministry of Social Development has been playing their role too with respect to the counsellors that they have, as well as Ministry of Education that has counsellors. Part of the hotline that we have is to deal with that, and I want to take the opportunity to also say that as of today, Clare Harbour will be taking over the management of that hotline as part of their contribution, no expense to the government, as part of their contribution to allow us to apply those resources that we had applied there to other areas. But yes, counseling is going to be very important, which is why it is most important. You have to imagine, and I've heard it personally and seen it on their faces, some of our healthcare workers who are stepping up and doing their part and preparing, and then they see one or two of their own colleagues spreading disinformation. It affects me, but it really does add negatively to the psyche of the countless healthcare workers that are going to do their best as the challenges proceed. So media workers, you monitor social media as well. Help us help those who haven't got the big pictures yet. So support as best as possible. That would be why you've seen both myself and Dr. Mitchell on the front lines. When the first front was just the airport and cruise ships, we weren't just asking those individuals to step up and give them the necessary support. We were there with them. The hospital, our senior team, hospital administrator, medical director, almost daily, not phone calls, but I make it a point, no matter how busy we are, to physically be there as well, to give them that moral support as they are doing their task, and to continue with our hospital workers in general and across the board. The team went up to Princess Alice last week as well, senior team at the ministry. So throughout, we need to make sure as a community that we give all of the support, moral, psychological, and wherever possible, to our healthcare workers as they proceed to ramp up, as they proceed, in most cases, moving forward, they may have to disconnect themselves from their very communities to deal with issues. It would help if neighbors and so were able to approach them from now to say, hey, when that time comes, or if you need any support, you can count on me, so that you can go do what you need to do. So all of those things we need to do if we come together and recognize those who are going to be on the front line and give them the support from now, and stop being distracted on trying to find some sort of scandal or poke some sort of hole into the system. We will come out of this as best as possible. So recognize your healthcare workers, most definitely. This is coincidentally, internationally, the year of the nurse. And while it was meant to be when it was first named, and I know because I'm part of the WHO board that I pushed that forward, it was meant to give recognition to the type of service that is given by our nurses. It has turned out to be the year that they will give some of their greatest service ever. And we need to recognize that from now and do the best we can to support them in that initiative.
Thank you, Minister. So it's 11:32. My final question to wrap this up. The Prime Minister had said last week at the meeting of stakeholders that we cannot close down the country because of the impacts. What if people become so scared, again, using the scenario that we have some cases here and then people begin to get scared, and then people just don't report to work, and I guess they'll see it as their right to protect themselves and their health. Have we thought of what contingency measures can be put in place to ensure that essential services at least keep going?
Essential services on their own need to take those things into consideration. What is different in this instance with respect to essential services than the last time we had a national challenge? Remember, after Hurricane Ivan, everything was blown down with respect to electricity. All poles, or so many poles, were down, so there wasn't distribution of. And water mains were broken, so there wasn't distribution of. But the essential service workers had to step up to the challenge to make sure that they rebuilt and reconnected citizens as quickly as possible. In this instance, there isn't that physical storm of wind or so that's going to come and destroy the infrastructure. But that doesn't mean that the challenge isn't going to be a challenge for them. So, as well, when we say medical team as well, we also got to, thank you for bringing that up, we got to recognize those who provide essential services as well and give them the support. And if we are going to be realistic, as we have to be with respect to always consider worst case downside, some of them may get sick. So you got to think of all of those contingencies. So having said that, let me try and just make a closing statement. As brief as possible, I can say that we have listed and continue to look at the Ministry of Health websites. You will hear loudspeakers out as well. We're using every medium possible. Would like to continue to have, from those of you of the media, your support. We are going to need you to take the initiative of taking some of the PSAs that we have and making sure they are on your print or television or radio as well. We are not out of the woods. We do not have a case yet. We cannot be complacent. We have to assume the worst case, that we haven't found that case as yet. And finally, at this point in time, it's got to be what you can do for your country and not what your country can do for you, because we are all in this together.
Thank you, Minister. Dr. Mitchell, any final words from you?
No, I just want to echo the sentiments of Minister Steele. This is not a ministry of health only. issue, but this is a national issue, and we are calling on all of the entities, workplaces, organizations to be a part of this. I know for sure that a lot of them, Nawasa, is it not Cable and Wireless anymore? I think it's Lime, Flo, they are making their contingency plans. Yeah, all of them, they're making their contingency plans. Been having a little discussions with them, and to answer the question that you asked, they are making contingency plans just in case that kind of scenario presents itself. But we want to make sure that this is, as I say, galvanizes a national response, and the coordinator is calling on everyone to play their part, to put up their hand, and make sure that we are part of this solution.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so very much. We've kept you long enough. We do appreciate. So to the Honorable Nicholas Steele, Minister for Health, to my immediate left, and to his left, the COVID-19 Response Coordinator, Dr. George Mitchell. And we have inset Ms. Michelle Braffett representing the School for the Deaf. We have a lot of information, of course, to disseminate to the public. And as media workers, let us do our best to be as responsible as possible and to see if we can clamp down on some of the negative comments that we're seeing in social media. Thank you so much for viewing. Thank you, colleagues, for coming. Have a blessed day, everybody.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Ten samples sent to CARFA for testing return negative. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Monday, March 16th, 2020, I am Rikisha St. Louis. COVID-19 Response Coordinator Dr. George Mitchell says the 10 samples sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA, for testing for the coronavirus have returned negative. Dr. George Mitchell has been providing regular updates to the nation on the virus, sharing tips on how families can implement their preparedness plans and how the elderly and children can be protected.
Those 10 samples were sent down to CARFR, which is the regional lab that we're using in Trinidad that most islands are using. And of the samples that we have sent, all of them, and I repeat, all of them, all 10 of them came back negative. I was on the phone with the director of the lab up until about 12 o'clock on Saturday night, and I was happy to get those results, which I immediately passed on to the minister and the executive team.
Dr. Mitchell highlighted the details of the case of the St. Lucian woman who caused panic in Grenada over the weekend. That passenger came here on the 29th of February, was ill based on the follow-up that we did. Since before she came here, went to see her GP in the UK, was treated with some antibiotics, felt better to take the flight, came here, and when she got here, she sort of like started feeling a bit unwell again. She accompanied her husband, so she was not one of the players. She accompanied her husband to that game, sat by herself, as far as we know, in the pavilion. There, she was not actively demonstrating any signs of symptoms. She was not coughing, she was not sneezing, or anything where she would have been able to sort of like pass on the virus. And that happened on the 1st. She went back to the hotel after the game and did not go out after that based on the information we have. So it is interesting to note, Leslie, and that particular patient did not even pass the virus to her husband, who she lived with and would have been in the most maybe proximal, contact with her. And they have tested the rest of passengers as well. And as far as we know and as far as we're concerned, none of them who are on the party have tested positive. The COVID-19 coordinator says the Ministry of Health is currently doing contact tracing to find anyone who may have been in close proximity or direct contact with the individual, so they too can be tested. Our team on the ground went to Radisson on Saturday and do as a thorough contact tracing as we can possibly do. And so persons have been followed up and are being checked to ensure that that person did not infect anybody here. Another batch is ready to serve with the Royal Grenada Police Force. On Friday, the passing out ceremony of recruit course number 44 was held at Camp Saline. The graduating group consists of 56 officers and is recognized as the second largest group of the training school since 1994.
26 weeks ago, on the 23rd of September 2019, I had the distinct pleasure of welcoming recruit course number 44 into the walls and environs of the Police Training School to commence the revolutionary, transformative process in becoming RGPF compliant officers. Yet again, 60 successful candidates commenced that process. They were filled with intuitive apprehension, having heard the varying stories of what to expect. Unfortunately, only 56 were able to successfully navigate the labyrinth and convolution of the training syllabus.
Acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Edwin Martin, urges the graduates to uphold the values of their occupation as they strive toward combating crime in Grenada.
Graduates, from this day, you will be role models to society and gatekeepers of criminal justice. Every action you take in your personal and professional life will be the subject of intense public scrutiny. There will be times throughout your career that you will be faced with situations to make critical decisions that can either generate the desired results or unintended consequences. Remember, each of those decisions, whether right or wrong, will in part become part of your legacy. You are going to be challenged. You will be tempted and you will find yourselves in difficult situations. However, I admonish you to always do the right thing.
Feature address speaker, Solicitor General Ms. Dia Forrester, had some words of advice for the graduates.
Do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. When you do those things, you have to be conscious of your duty. You have to be conscious that the reputation that you build and the character you display will define you. Your reputation is what others think of you, and your character is who you are. Preserve and guard both faithfully throughout your professional life as an officer. Insubordination is not acceptable, but neither is victimization. Neither must feature when you serve.
This is the National Report. We'll have more news after the break. The Special and Inclusive Education Draft Policy was the subject of a recent stakeholder consultation, which focused on ways in which the policy can create improved access and opportunities for students with special needs. We get more in this Annette Moore report.
Every child can succeed. Every child is valuable, and we ought to demonstrate that.
Nothing about us without us. You must include them so that they will feel part of society.
I am very happy that the ministry is taking this approach, which means that we are more aware, we're more conscious, and we're willing to give them the sort of education that they would need to help them to be independent.
The Special and Inclusive Needs Education Draft Policy is intended to create more equitable access to education for all special needs students in the Tri-Island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. While special education has achieved many milestones in the past few decades, there is still more to be done. Janelyn St. John, a member of the Special Education Unit at the Ministry of Education, tells us more.
We look at accommodation. We looked at financing, we looked at what is expected from our general stakeholders as well as from the Ministry of Education, parental involvement, and our corporate citizens. It's just like how everybody can come together to ensure that we accommodate persons with special needs. In terms of transitioning from the school to the world of work and ensuring that persons with special needs are given some sort, well, maybe not priority, but they are given consideration as it relates to finding employment. We have to concentrate on a lot of data gathering, and that is an area that we really need to do a lot of work in.
I'm extremely happy with the work that the ministry is currently doing as it relates to a policy for special education, inclusive education. We value this very much, and while the ministry at this time is undertaking to bring to completion about 9 different policies, a total of 20 for this year, but about 9 for this first quarter, I'm singling out special education, inclusive education, because of the fact that we are making a tremendous effort to ensure that every child has an equal opportunity as it relates to education in Grenada.
Several stakeholders at the draft policy consultation told us what they think the current challenges are for people with special needs, what they liked about the policy, and their expectations for its future implementation. Jared Kajo is a parent of a special needs student and the principal of the Samaritan Presbyterian School in St. Mark, which serves students with special needs.
There are so many challenges. We have access to educational services, just like the other regular students would have. But because they have special needs, there might be a challenge. So we're looking at the physical infrastructure, That is an issue. Ramps and so on, to ensure that those who have physical disability can get to classes and so on and so forth. When they have finished school, what happens when they have to go to work? They become adults. They have to access public buildings too. So all these are part of the legislation that we will see happen, and we're very happy about it.
Whatever we are doing as it relates to repairs, construction of new facilities, we want to make sure that they're more suitable for persons with challenges. And of course, the cost goes up with that. But we have to ensure that we move in that direction.
We have discussed the plans to have classes equipped with more equipment to address the needs, like the FM system, the hearing aids and all that.
We want to reach that place where every child can be screened, not just for hearing challenges, but speech impediments and so on. How do we detect that very early in the stage of that child, before that child even enters school? We've been partnering through the Ministry of Health with the Starkey Foundation, and you notice a number of our students with hearing issues. We have benefited significantly from that. A number of our students got free hearing aids through that program.
The human resource at the school too, training of teachers or persons to assist, or the availability or lack of availability of assistant teachers, which is critical, I think, in assisting, especially if we want these students to be assimilated into the mainstream.
We are focusing on training. So right now we've just invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a group of teachers who are now at St. George's University doing a first degree fully funded by the government of Grenada. And that first degree in psychology has a focus in special education.
Founding member of the Grenada Down Syndrome Association and parent to a special needs child, Alison Miller, shared her thoughts on special needs and the draft policy.
I like to focus on the parents a bit. We need to do education. We need to find employment for some of them. We need to be able to allow them to move from one level to the next so they could take care of their children with special needs. We need to do a lot of public awareness and education because a lot of people still don't understand people and children with special needs.
A representative from the Grenada Council for the Disabled also shared her views.
We have done a lot of work, all the agencies, stakeholders and so, but we have a lot more to do where we have to make them aware as to how they should treat persons with disabilities. I love the part of the children when they finish school. They should be trained and be employed just as anybody once they're employable. And I think we have to change the mindset of the employers that these persons could be employed once they are properly trained. And we have to put the person first before the disability.
The special and inclusive education policy may take another year or more to arrive at completion and receive approval for implementation.
Once we take all the suggestions that were given from the stakeholders present, we are going to use those suggestions to further guide how we go about ensuring that we have a completed document.
I believe it will be implemented, and I am happy about the transportation issue, the idea of being able to move children from the special school into the regular school as far as their ability allows.
What I want to advocate is that we have to have this implemented as soon as possible.
It's a step in the right direction. It's a fantastic job, and I think we need to compliment them and continue working with them. It brings a sense of growth to this country, a sense of unity, and it makes us feel that things could happen, but if we work together.
So all of this is towards how do we get to that place where we can say we are satisfied that as a country, as a nation, we are adequately providing for all students so that every child has an equal chance to succeed.
For the National Report, I'm Annette Moore.
That story just ended the national report for today, Monday, March 16th. Let's recap the top story. 10 samples sent to CARFA for testing return negative. On behalf of the entire news team here at the Government Information Service, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.